Okay, we're going to be discussing a little bit of Abraha. Okay, the Ethiopian Arab. Um, he's Ethiopian, but he was running things in Arabia during the life of the Prophet Muhammad. So it was, it's incumbent. Again, I always say you hear all about the Byzantines, you hear all about the Sassanids empires, but you never hear about the Ethiopian Empire. Like they really belittle this, or they really just, talk it down in terms of academia. And I'm doing it strictly to academia because you don't get to hear it. I'm telling you, I bring up books, you don't get to hear anything about the Axum Empire. And I'm always like, why is that? Why is that? And then you've got people like Jay Smith, Mel from Speaker's Corner. Who else do we have? We have a lot of individuals, but they speak about it from like, let's go to Persia and, connect Muhammad to Persia or something like that, or the Quran to. I'm like, why don't we see what the actual archaeological evidence point to? Let's listen to the oral traditions as well. Let's see what they say. Let's look at the literary sources. Let's see what they say. And everything points back to the Aksumite Empire, but nobody discusses this. And this is like inside of academia as well. And I'm always perplexed as though why not enough attention is given to that side of the world. But I have to shout out to people like, Manfred Kropp, what's his name? Christian, Robin, who else? Gabriel Reynolds, as well as, what's his name? Carlos A. Segovia. Like, shout out to these guys because they actually bring up these points. And I'm like, finally, now you're speaking my language. Because it goes here. Before paying attention to the Quran's early Christology, see it? Before we even go into what the Quran has to say about Christ, yeah, let's do this. However, we should glimpse into the 6th to 7th century South Arabia and Iraq. First, I will try to show that withdrawal from Byzantium indirect control in political and religious matters defined the situation in Yemen and thereby the Arabian Peninsula, in addition to other important regions of the Near East on the eve of Islam. Okay, this is the bit right here, yeah? This is the bit right here that excites me. From an Afrocentric position, from African-centered scholarship, we're now discussing, what we need to discuss. We're now looking at it from the eyes of what the early Arabian historiographers had to say. They started, when they spoke about the origins of Islam, you know where they started it from? They started it from Ethiopia. That's the first thing that they talk about. Let's discuss Ethiopia first, and then let's go into the rest of it, right? And I love it that this particular scholar says, let's do exactly the same thing. If we're going to have to talk about the birth of Islam, let's go into Ethiopia, the Aksumite Empire, and let's go forward. This is what I love. And you don't get to hear that type of context. Why don't we ever hear it? Because I'm sure that a lot of us, anyways, let me not even talk. Let's go. Let's get into it. So it says here, around 525 or 531, Caleb, king of Axum, ancient Ethiopia, defeated the self-proclaimed Jewish king of Himyar, okay, Yusuf Asar Yathar, okay, cool. So, and funnily enough, the whole story of this is actually written in the Quran. Can you imagine? Can you imagine this particular incident right here that the author is going into in terms of history is actually spoken about in the Quran? Let's read. Okay. Who, following his rise to power, had the Aksumite garrison in Zafar, the Himyarite capital, killed. Zafar's church destroyed, the coastal regions of the Red Sea facing Aksum seized, and the Miaphysite community of Najran, the main Christian spot in the southwest of the Arabian Peninsula, next to the modern frontier between Saudi Arabia and Yemen, massacred. Thus, Aksumite authority, which had gained prominence in the region in the 500s and the 510s, and Christianity with it, were imposed in Himyar, an event from which Byzantium benefited, for it implied controlling with the help of a victorious ally the trade routes through the eastern Anyways, let me not even go there. But anyway, that story there, it talks about where, the people of the ditch, I'm sure there's a Quranic chapter, surah, or verses that discusses this. This is it. Yeah, when the Jewish king killed those Christians, and buried them in the ditch. This is a big thing All right. It's like, why don't we hear this? Like, why don't, when they talk about history, why don't they talk about this particular part in history? Because the whole Christian world got together, okay, to commemorate this particular incident that got written into the Quran. All right. Why don't we ever hear that type of stories in this day and age? Like, beautiful things that we don't hear about. But anyways, let's continue. Let me just continue quickly. So, I will be skipping through a lot of these things because it just shows you inscriptions, epigraphy, how can I put it? What's his name here? What's his name? There you go. Yafa Aswa. His inscriptions and basically how it's written in the Ghaiz language. And, it's going to show you the difference between, how the Ethiopians spoke from that period. And then when it comes to Abraha, he says, you know what? Let me change it up. Okay. Your Christology, I hear you, but let me just change it up. Okay. Because I'm not really feeling Christ as described as God's son. I'm not really feeling that. I'm not really feeling them type of verbiage there. He changes it up. Mind you, he's a Christian. Yeah. But he changes it up. And let's figure it out. So it says here, Sumyafa Aswa reigned was short, lived. Nevertheless, around 535, his army commander Abraha deposed him and assumed the throne of Himyar. Upon receiving this news, Caleb sent 2 military expeditions against Abraha, but the new self-proclaimed king managed to negotiate an agreement with Caleb's soldiers the first time and then crush Caleb's second time. Okay. Judging from his reign, let's quickly see, extended his rule to neighboring. So he was ruling, Seba, Raidan, Hadramat, Yamanat, Taud, Tihama. More interestingly, he refused to act as a vassal king of Axum, as can be fairly deduced from the way in which his official inscriptions display his will to maintain, if not to restore, the brilliance of the cradle of South Arabian civilization, and thus to consolidate a contested legitimacy by acting as an indigenous sovereign. This right here is going to set the stage for Islam. This right here is going to set the stage for the Arabian Peninsula. This man here, okay? He was a subordinate king of the Ethiopian Empire, but he was doing his own thing. Yeah? Bad man. Yeah? Bad man. Let's continue. Aiming perhaps at affirming his political independence from Axum. Lastly, the wording relative to Jesus and Jesus' relation to God is also different. Okay? So, in the normal Ethiopic text, it's always referring to Rahman and his son Christ, Rahman and his son, etc. But with Abraha, he changes it up. He says, nah, not his son, but his Messiah. This could seem go over people's heads. Yeah, real quickly. But we can see right here, he switches it. Okay. No more son, not more using the word Christ, or no more using the word son. And we can see that in the Quranic context, that it doesn't like calling, Jesus the son. He doesn't like calling anybody the son, right? But we can see in Abraha's time, he was the first one to bring about this innovation and change inside of the Arabian Peninsula. Okay, from referring to Christ or Jesus as the Son of God, he changed it to the Rahman and his Messiah. And we'll further find out that he also uses Syriac words. Oh, here you go. I love it. See, peripheral Christianity and formative Islam. This way gets interesting. Why did Abraha choose the term Messiah, which is unattested elsewhere in the whole corpus of ancient South Arabian inscriptions, to name Jesus? Yeah, this is it here. Now, it gives you the various scholars, such as Alfred Beeston. Who else do we have here? We have quite a lot of people, quite a lot of scholars. I'm trying to quickly go through it. Christian Robin gives something here. Who else? Shahid gives another interpretation. You have to read it. I'm not going to go through everything as to why they believe that he changed things over. Okay. For he actually does not explicitly call the Messiah the Son, which is also the longest and perhaps the most important one, present and apparent, but no more than that. Therefore, Trinitarian outlook. In turn, Robin's interpretation overlooks the problems inherent in the objective Jewish Christian. Okay, there's something else. All right. So this is actually a good bit, though. This is a good bit. Invocations of Jesus in late antique Christianity normally mention God the Father and his Son Christ. Yet East Diaphysites, who held that Christ was God's Son, like the Miaphysites and the Chalcedonians, are known to have emphasized against the Miaphysites, and even more than the Chalcedonians themselves, Jesus's human nature. Hold on, let me get that right. So let's do that. East Diaphysites, cool. Thus, the well-known East Syrian description of Mary as the mother of the Messiah. Whoo, yeah, this is key. This is key phraseology again, because in the Quran, it doesn't refer to Jesus' mother as the Theotokos, meaning the mother of God. It always calls her the mother of the Messiah. So we can see where this Eastern Syrian influence came from via Abraha and his version of Christianity. Ooh, y'all I don't know. I don't know if you get excited like this, you know. You don't get the excitement. It's just exciting for me to learn this stuff. But I thought, let me share it with you because, you know, but if you get excited, like, give me a thumbs up in the comment section, yeah, if you get excited by this type of information. All right. Rather than Theotokos, mother of God, let me be clear. The formula God and his Messiah has a relatively weak scriptural basis and is not tested in the corpus of late antique East Syrian literature, but it may be said to implicitly fit with the Diaphysite mindset. Okay. The Diaphysite mindset. Besides the East Diaphysites, Christians apparently lived in Yemen during Abraha's reign. Hence, it is not totally unreasonable to ask whether Abraha tried to distance himself from the axiom by endorsing an East Syrian orientated Christology. But it could also be that Abraha, who obviously was and presented himself as a Christian king, simply tried to avoid any sharp provocation against the Jews of Himyar, a land that for several centuries had witnessed to an ongoing religious conflict between Christians and Jews, and which he attempted to rule in his own way. Had Abraha intended not to offend his Jewish subjects, he could have done so by invoking God alone, instead of God plus his Messiah, equaling Jesus. Indeed, Rahman was also the South Arabian Jewish name for God, yet referring to Jesus as the Messiah would be less provoking for them than describing him as God's divine son. Jeez. Okay. Interesting. Let me see. Let's quickly skip down. But if both hypotheses may complement one another, it is perhaps wise to assign a bigger role to the possibility pointed to in the latter one, as some kind of realpolitik towards the Jews may well have helped Abraha to successfully lay foundations of an autonomous and cohesive rule. Jeez, the politics of creating a religion, you know. Whatever the case, Abraha's innovative Christological formula evinces that South Arabian Christians in the 6th century were not unfamiliar with the representation of Jesus as God's Messiah instead of Son. Let's do that again. Whatever the case, Abraha's innovative Christological formula evinces that the South Arabian Christians in the 6th century were not unfamiliar with the representation of Jesus as God's Messiah instead of Son, a feature that curiously we find in the Quran. Let's highlight that big time. Yeah? Big time. Yeah? Big time. I like that. A feature that curiously we find again in the Quran. This is the final good point that's brought up in this particular book that I would like to touch on real quickly. Okay, so we've just gone down one page. Okay, cool. See, Manfred Kropp, this is the big man right here. Let me just get this highlighted in this color. Okay, cool. All right. There is good reason to presume that Abraha did not. There is good reason to presume that Abraha did not only conquer, but also had his particular form of Christianity spread in Central Arabia. Most likely to his peculiar type of Christianity also reached Yathrib in the Hijaz, and perhaps even Mecca, which had commercial ties with the Yamama in pre-Islamic times.